Hello everyone, my name is Grayson and welcome to a little series on a game called Oaken. This game is a roguelite game that kind of plays a little bit like a board game, a little bit kind of like a programming game in a way, because there's very, very few things that happen that you can't predict. So it's very tactical, but it has that sort of progression that a roguelite might have where you're moving on through an area and upgrading your spells and your units, which are kind of like cards, right? It's sort of a card-based game. And you're summoning things and moving them around. You might be buffing them over the course of a run. And you can take different sort of things with you from the start. You'll find different things as you go, including artifacts. So you'll feel right at home playing this if you've enjoyed games like Monster Train, Slay the Spire, etc. You know, a bunch of the other games I've played on my channel are quite similar to this. Now, Oaken is developed by, it's either Lackey or Locky Studios. I don't know how they want that pronounced. And it's published by Goblins. Goblins have published a whole bunch of great games like Legend of Keepers, which I've played on here a pretty good number of times on my channel, and Defend the Rook, which is a game I may be looking at for this channel as well pretty soon. Oaken, a bunch of other stuff, Terraformers, they have a lot of great stuff on there, Heroes Hour. So Goblins, really, I quite enjoy their games quite a bit. So what is this game like? So essentially we're in like a corrupted, I think it's an oak tree. We're in this corrupted tree, and what we need to do is get to the heart of the tree and cleanse the corruption. You can kind of see there's this spooky monster in the back here. I will point out that in this game, like a lot of other roguelites, there are progression mechanics, and you may not want that spoiled. So let me warn you now that depending on how this run goes and how much of this I upload, you may be seeing some cards, some character options, some bosses that you may not want to see for yourself. So if that's something you're worried about, then, you know, there may come a point where you want to stop watching. I'll try to warn you when spoilers are about to come. So I'll warn you about that. So let's start a new game. We'll show you how everything works. So you pick a character to play as. So right now there's only one. This is in early access. You have the lady, but she's very, very fun, and there's plenty to enjoy about her. So she's naive but surprisingly fierce, Sprout, whose voice attracts wisps and soothes other spirits. After waking up from a long dream, she began her journey down the oak, following some unclear purpose. So she comes with this stuff here. So what are these things? Here is her. She is a 2 attack, 16 health character. So 16 health is a lot, but 2 attack is kind of low-ish. But the reason that she has so much health and so little attack is she's really your king. She's your, in terms of chess, she's your unit that you can't let fall or you lose the run. So her job is really to just exist. You have to protect her, but there are ways to upgrade her into quite the powerhouse, which I have done before. She comes with a couple of powers that you can use. This one creates like a cultivated tile on the maps, and we'll show you how that works when we get there. And then this one here restores 2 health to herself or an adjacent unit, so she can go around kind of healing up her units. She also starts with, so this is her and her powers. She starts with 2 of her 3 powers. There's going to be a 3rd power that comes from a different source, and I'll show you that in a moment. She also starts with these 2 units and this spell. So she has these seedlings. They are 3 damage, 3 health. You can see up here at the top, they cost 2, like, essentially mana to bring them in. And what these do is they have an awake ability, which means when it's summoned, it basically fills its frontal arc of hexes with the cultivated tiles. So this seedling, you can pop it down and either cleanse corrupted tiles or create cultivated tiles. So it's kind of like a little support / high damage unit for the early game for you to use. You have 2 of those to start. And we also have this Impale card, which is a spell that just deals 4 damage to an enemy in your line of sight. So we're going to confirm that, and then we get to pick a guide. So there's going to be a little bit of spoilers here. You start with 1 guide, so let me show you what I have unlocked here. So I have 3. I have, what is this person's name? Aya. She is a 4 damage, 3 health. She is a ranged unit, so she can shoot. She doesn't have to go in close and risk getting hit. That's why she has kind of low health. She costs 5 to bring in, and she deals damage when she spawns in. She's pretty fun. And what she does is she actually brings you a passive power and a active power. So remember that healing power and that cultivation creating power that we start with, she will give us another power. And if we pick a different guide, we'll get a different power from each one, which is really, really interesting. So with Aya, we've got the Piercing Thorn. Just deal 1 damage to an enemy in your line of sight. This skill's really great. For 1 mana, you can basically infinitely finish off low health enemies or prepare them to die from something else. Once per turn, you can use this. And her passive is enemies on cultivated tiles take damage at the start of your turn. So you can create cultivation underneath things, and then they automatically take a little bit of damage. So these in tandem make it really easy to finish off low health enemies with your character and your spells. She comes with her, these Stalkers. These are 2 mana, 2 4s, and they have +1/+1 if they're on cultivated tiles. So again, you're encouraged to sort of fill the board up with the green cultivation tiles, and your creatures get stronger and enemies start taking damage. It's really fantastic. And she gives you 1 more of these Impale spells. I've also used this guy, what's his name, Enju. He's a 1/7, but he has like basically a taunt, so you can put him down and then enemies must attack him. So he's very defensive. He comes with these wardens, these 3/6s that are defenders. Plop them down and put your range units behind them, and then they're forced to attack these. His power is give a nearby ally +1/+1. This is very strong, and I would, at least in my experience, I would argue that this kit is better than this kit. But this one, certainly you miss this passive ability when you're not playing her, because it was so helpful. He also comes with this restoring health based on the cultivation tiles. And his passive is whenever an ally gains health for any reason, you heal them, they also get +1 strength, basically damage, for a single hit. So this guy, he's got all these high health monsters. You can make them stronger and heal them, and then they get even stronger. So I did beat the final boss with this character, and it's because I had a bunch of monsters that had, 12 to 15 attack, because they were just buffed so much. It was really fun. And then I've recently unlocked this character here. This character's name, sorry, I can never remember their name, Baralai. This is sort of like a cavalry centaur guy. So he's got these like crawler units that push things away. And he's got this really interesting passive where normally when units collide with each other or terrain, they get damaged. But his passives, your units, instead of getting damaged, they actually get stronger from colliding. So it's kind of like they're charging around. And then bonk, push a unit in your frontal arc away. So you could bonk an ally to make them stronger. You could bonk an enemy to get them away from you or to hurt them. So very, very interesting. I think I'll play with him because I've not actually used him yet. I've seen some of this stuff in one of my runs, but I haven't played with him yet. So let's confirm Baralai here, who is super cool. He thinks he's very fancy, which of course he is. Great character art. Oh, look at all these guys. I really love this a lot. I love this nature theme. And then you can see these darkened out characters are ones that I haven't unlocked yet. I don't know if they're all available yet, but I know that this game plans on having multiple heroes and then a bunch of these, what they call guides, available for different runs. So let's confirm and continue. So the lady and Baralai will together make my starting deck of abilities and cards. And I'm just going to do it on standard because I have not played with this character yet. So this will make it a little bit easier to show off and progress through, and you can see what happens. So let's get started here. So we start on the Oak's Crown, Chapter 1. Beautiful art. I mean, this is the map. I love these little symbols. They're very naturey and artsy. The music is great. The menus all look fantastic too. Like this is just, it's very functional and very aesthetic. Like these upgrade and destroy, like the little animations I have tied to them, they're just fantastic. And the tooltips are really great. There's very few things in this game that aren't clear just by reading them. And then there is a tutorial which you should 100% play and do not skip because it will explain. There's a few things like line of sight and stuff that are very important to get the hang of. I'm going to talk about that in this episode, which is probably episode 0 at this point. But I do want to make that clear that the tutorial is kind of important. So let's go through the UI really quickly. So this is in the center here. This is our map. So this is the first basically level. We have a boss down here of some kind, and then we have our, like in a lot of roguelites, a Slay the Spire style map where you pick a route and then you can kind of bounce between the nodes as you go. There's a bunch of different types of nodes, nothing really out of the ordinary here. We have events. Usually you make decisions where you can take damage, you can pick different rewards, things like that. A refuge is where you spend dust, remove fatigue, or search for wisps. So a refuge is if you are low on health or you're like exhausted or something, you can go there and kind of rest up. And if you don't need it, you can get other things instead. So it's never wasted to go to like a rest stop if you don't feel like you need it, because you can get other rewards. Secret could be a bunch of different kinds of cool stuff. I think that's a good spot to search for the new guides, because the two guides that I didn't start with, Anju and Baralai, the one I'm using now, I found during runs of other games. So I go through, I find them, I help them, and then they join me, and then next game I can use them. Very cool. You don't just unlock them by playing, you have to kind of find them and succeed in helping them out, which is a great mechanic. We have standard battles. This little like flamey looking wisp thing here is a standard battle. An encounter is, it says fight an easy battle, but it's more like a puzzle encounter. They're not very risky. It's pretty easy to get out of these without taking any damage or losing anything, but it can be challenging to get a lot of stuff out of there. And you'll see what I mean if we do one of those. I'll try to do every single kind of node. But these are really interesting. Like there might be a battle where the entire map is collapsing and you have, you can spend as long as you want in there trying to collect the resources from the tiles and stuff. But every turn, more and more tiles are being, collapsed upon, and you're at risk of taking a lot of damage or possibly dying if you mess up. Very interesting. Elites are really hard battles, but you'll get a trinket, which is an artifact, basically an artifact. We start with this one, but kind of like Slay the Spire or Monster Train or whatever, you'll get a bunch of different artifacts over the run, a handful. That'll modify all sorts of cool different stuff for you. And then here's the boss down here at the bottom. In our deck, we have, this shows how many cards we have in our deck. This shows how many unused wisps and Lumi globes we have. That's a lot of terminology, I know, but we'll just talk about it as we get them. Essentially, one of them here is Lumi Dust. Lumi Dust is the easiest one to understand. What you can do is you can click and hold this and drag it, and you can see right here, it'll show -12. I think it's always 12. I've never found something that isn't 12. But Lumi Dust is something you get from battles and from various other sources as well. And you can use this dust to upgrade cards. And it will show you it'll preview it over here. It won't show me right now because I don't actually have it. But every card, every creature can be upgraded a number of times equal to these little triangular pips below the card. They tend to follow a pretty standard pattern in my experience, which is the first upgrade will be damage, the second upgrade will be health, and then it will alternate back and forth. So this one would likely become a 5-3, then a 5-4, then a 6-4, then a 6-5, if that makes sense. Same here, this will become a 4-3, then a 4-4 with 2 upgrades. So do think about that, but it will show you over here a preview of what's going to happen. There are wisps. Wisps are little thingies you'll find that can be added onto creatures to give them special powers. So it might be something as simple as you might find a wisp that if you put it on a creature, it gives them that defender, that taunt ability. So you can just slap one of those on there, and I think they can only ever have one wisp, just FYI. And then there are Lumi globes, and those are used for upgrading your spells and even your passive powers, which is really, really cool. So if I think it's 1 Lumi globe to upgrade a spell. So for instance, this is deal 4 damage to an enemy in your line of sight. You might use a Lumi globe, and then instead of, it doesn't upgrade from here, it upgrades from the globes. It will make this spell better, or this spell better, or any other spells you find during the game. If you have 2 Lumi globes, you can upgrade a passive. So this says create a cultivation nearby. The upgrade, I believe, means you can do it anywhere on the map. So it doesn't have a 2 hex range anymore. This really should say the range, but it just says nearby. Nearby in this game typically means about 2 hexes away, just FYI. This is restore 2 health to self or adjacent unit. I believe the upgrade is 3 health to anything, anywhere. And then this one, I don't know what happens. Push a unit in your frontal arc. It might be all units, I would guess, is probably what it's going to upgrade to. But again, I don't know yet. So that's what all the different materials and stuff are for upgrading. You can see your hero unit, your guide, Barreleye here, who's helping out the lady. And you can summon him in. I think he's always going to start in your hand. I believe your guide always starts in your hand. You can summon them once per battle. So this is a 4/4. Awake runs forward until colliding, and then advance pushes units in its frontal arc away, except for the ones to its front. Interesting. So he's just disruptive. But again, our passive is that units that collide, allies that collide, regain health and gain a shield instead of taking damage. So this is very different from the regular way the game works. Please keep that in mind. So that's going to be really interesting for me to do that for the first time. There's another mechanic in this game called, I think it's called exhaustion. And it might be like some sort of corruption or something. And essentially what it does is if you take this like exhaustion damage, it permanently lowers your maximum health of a unit until you've cleansed it or beaten the boss of the level. So it's not uncommon to start a map like this with your lady at 2 and 16 and get to the boss and have a max health of only 8 or something like that. And it hurts because you cannot heal that in normal ways. You have to do stuff like go to these resting nodes or perhaps find, you know, some sort of special upgrade or something. But it's hard to heal that. And not just your hero, but your guide and your other units can also get that, and it sucks. So you can have, you know, a seedling get a couple stacks of that and be a 3/1, you know, as early as in here, and then you're fighting the boss and all of your units are weaker than normal. And it's really tough. It's tough to work around that. They will automatically all cleanse after you beat a boss and move to the next zone. The other thing that can happen is during a fight or any sort of event where you're actually using your abilities and your spells and units, every time you use a unit or spell, it goes back in your deck, but the next time it comes up, it will kind of be like, has like a static effect over it. If you use it again during that battle, before you finish it and move to another node, it will become permanently exhausted until the end of this boss. So if I get into dire straits and I need to summon this exact seedling a second time, this seedling will be unusable until I make it to the next map. So you have to avoid doing that at all costs, because if your deck gets too empty, you just run out of options, and you're not gonna, I mean, the lady is a 216, cannot handle too many fights on her own. So you have to be very careful with that. You can also destroy cards that you have in your collection to get, you can see, I get 8 back for destroying most of these cards. I have actually never destroyed a card because I find that I get so much of this Lumi dust that I can upgrade almost everything I have by at least 1 or 2 levels, if not like 4. So I have never felt the need to purge my deck of stuff, but that there may come a time when that happens. Especially when the game has this mechanic by which if you run out of cards, you have to start spending them and then they don't come back. So it feels like I don't want to thin my deck out very much, if at all, because it kind of becomes quite dangerous to do so. So I have personally not destroyed things, but that may be something that you want to do at some other point. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. You can preview the cards. It's really cool that you can do that. You can like take a look at your little units that you'll have on the board when you're doing your fights and stuff. They're so cool that they gave you this preview option. Here's the lady. She's just this cute little sprout here. And here, let's look at Barreleye. Oh, what a fancy centaur thing he is. Wait, what are you actually? You know, it's just a horse. It's just a wood horse or a goat. All right, everybody. Well, I think we're going to call this one here and just call this an episode 0, essentially. And then we will start in the next episode and actually start doing the run. There'll still be, you know, a bit of explaining. I'll have to explain how the combat works and stuff like that. But at least for like setting up a run and understanding all the symbology and all of that, that's what this episode was for. So I want to thank everybody so much for watching. Hope you're going to enjoy this little mini series on Oaken. And I will see you in the next episode.